Hi, I'm John Garrett from hypertransitory.com, and this is my first tutorial video. It is on Illustrator and making a logo in Adobe Illustrator. So I thought I would start with why you would want to use Illustrator. I know there's a lot of Photoshop jockeys out there, and sometimes you don't really know why. I guess this is more of a beginner sort of thing. But Illustrator is using what are called vector graphics as opposed to Photoshop's raster graphics. So, and what that means is those graphics are mathematically generated using a formula, whereas Photoshop, the graphics are generated using pixels, so a bunch of dots essentially. And when you use Photoshop, when you use the dots, what you got is what you got. I mean, if you have 3,000 dots, 3,000 pixels, that's all you got. There's really not much more you can do. But when you use Illustrator, so this square here, we can see that it's 1.6 by 1.8. I can enlarge that, however large I want, and it does not lose quality. So that's what we call scalable. And you're going to need to have your logo in that sort of a format because you never know where the logo is going to be displayed at. It could be shown anywhere. It could be shown, on a billboard. It could be shown on the side of a truck or a letterhead, and it's got to be able to be enlarged and resized without losing quality. So that's why you're going to use Illustrator. And another reason probably why you're going to use Illustrator is why I would use it is because of spot colors. And what those are here we've got our regular CMYK colors, and if your client or if you have a specific Pantone or other swatch book color, you're going to need to apply that. What I would do here in Illustrator is I would go down to my swatch library and I would go to my color books, and what I normally use is Pantone Solid Coated. That's a pretty standard book of colors that's used in the United States. So let's say I wanted my logo to be, I'll go down here and pick one of the numbers, 2747, or if that's what the client calls for, if that's their color, that's what I got to use. And you see how easy that was for me to do in Illustrator. In Photoshop, it's not quite that easy. There's a bunch of steps that need to be taken to get spot colors working. In Photoshop, it's kind of a shame because I know they can do better than that, but they just don't feel the need for it. There's add-on programs that have been around for years that you can use to make spot colors easier. It's kind of a pain in the butt doing the spot colors in Photoshop. I really don't see the reason for it, but I think Adobe just figured, well, people have figured it out by now and they know the workarounds, they know how to do it, so we're not going to invest energy into that. We're going to put more 3D in. So that is what Illustrator is really good at. No problems with spot colors. Now, with that said, assuming you don't use spot color, let's say you're using CMYK, using any one of these. I mean, I normally will work in CMYK. Right now I've got RGB preview. I'm going to go change that. I'm going to change that to CMYK. I like to start working in CMYK because most of the stuff I'm doing, you gotta figure out where it's going to go first. Like if I'm doing a logo, I'm probably going to start that in CMYK, so there's no surprises later on down the road. Where if you start in RGB and you're not careful and you try to convert that to CMYK, a lot of the colors, especially reds, vivid reds and such, will go flat, and your client might say, "Wait a minute, that doesn't look like what you showed me because you showed it to him in RGB." There's different schools of thought on that. Some people like to work in RGB because it's a bigger color range and they can do more with RGB, and then they like to go ahead and switch over to CMYK after they're done doing everything they need to do. And you can do that if you're careful. Sometimes people aren't careful though, and what I mean is, let's say I double click on this and I get this color picker. Now here's the color I've got, and that's fine for now. But if I start moving up into some of the other areas, I'm going to get this warning and that's going to tell me that that color cannot be reproduced accurately in CMYK. So I have to, I really need to pick a different color there, because I don't want any surprises on the press when it gets printed. You just don't want to do that. I mean, look at some of these vivid reds. It's not going to work out. So, and it's telling you, hey, you can't use this color. So you got to be real careful of that. You can't just use any color you want, because you got to be mindful of what is the final output of this logo. So I'm going to cancel that. But and that arrow would show up here. That warning would show up here too if I chose that color. And I'll show you a quick thing in Photoshop. Now here's one of the niceties of Photoshop that doesn't exist in Illustrator. It has this gamut warning here, and I can move this all around, and this gray screen is telling me, hey, every color that's in this range you can't use, because CMYK can't reproduce that. Now I wish they had that in Illustrator. If they do, I couldn't figure out how to turn it on. So if anyone knows, you should let me know that, because that would be nice, but they don't have it. And that's one of the things you'll find out about Illustrator, is that the Illustrator team doesn't have the budget or the resources of the Photoshop team, so a lot of the little niceties aren't there. So you're kind of stuck in that regard, unless if you're a CorelDRAW user. I understand that the CorelDRAW users, they really love it, and it has a lot of things that Illustrator doesn't have. But I'm not a Corel user. I understand overseas Corel is the king, you know, maybe in Asia and such, but here in North America, I really believe Illustrator is the king. And there's also a free one called Inkscape that a lot of people use that apparently has the same functionality. I downloaded it one time, and it wasn't quite as polished as I'm used to from working on Illustrator. But I think it will get the job done for you if you're short on cash. So that's that right now. And that's kind of just the intro I wanted to give on kind of why to use this, why to use Illustrator. So I think right now we're going to move on to the actual making of the logo. As you can see here, I've got my hypertransitory website logo, which is not a very involved logo, and I'm not going to really get into how to design. I mean, that's kind of that's kind of a personal thing, and it's kind of a lot of people have different opinions on what's good design and not. I'm just going to try to go through and show what might be some of the pitfalls you might run into when you are making a logo. So let's move on to the next part. Thank you.